Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to Spirits and Ghost Stories. We're your hosts, Carly Bird.
And I'm Thomas Aarons.
I'd like to make an announcement. Everyone, as you notice, these balloons, they say, "Congrats, grad," and then a little one that says, "Congrats, grad." Why do you think it says that? Well, guess what just happened recently? This boy walked down the aisle with a tassel on his head. It was beautiful. It was amazing. It was expensive. And he did it.
I really did it. So I want to say a huge shout out to all of our Spirits and Ghost Stories fans. This is actually kind of fun for me.
Yeah.
I like this a lot. Huge shout out to all of our fans of Spirits and Ghost Stories. Doing something a little bit different. We were going to shoot on Fridays as per the normal use as we do. But I was like, it's Memorial Day. Why don't we do a little celebration for all the people that have to work or stuck at home with their families, having to do lawn chores or whatever. So glad to see everybody here. Our One Power fan. Love it. Good to see you out there. Please let us know how the audio is. Is it crispy? Is it good? Do we need to adjust anything?
I do never know whenever you plan to live stream. You're like, let's record an episode. So I go downstairs and then I sit down and you're like, by the way, it's going to be live. And I was like, oh, okay. Would have told like 15 people, but that's okay. That's all right. I'm sure they're busy anyway.
So a big announcement is, I don't know about this, but so in about 3 weeks, we should have some new software, hopefully. And then we're going to be able in our live streams to have the background music.
Yay.
I finally decided, like, you know what? Because now, Fishing DMV is an LLC. The next thing I need to buy is that auto mixer because it'd be so nice to have this and like have our little like button I can press to have the background music. Because honestly, after watching some of our live streams for Spirits and Ghost Stories, it's like that's all it's missing really is like if we just had the background music. So it's not just like a weird documentary with a creepy background.
I know.
But anyway,
Whoa,
I know, right? Sorry about that. I think it's the helium.
Body.
When you have a chance, could you move the balloons out of the way?
Un momento.
Por favor.
So Carly, how are we doing tonight? Or this morning? I know it's hard. I would actually love to do guys, let us know. Let us know in the comment section down below. For our 1-year anniversary, should we do the whole thing on helium?
Why are you saying it with an accent?
I'm not. I'm trying to get in the Appalachian. Oh, I'm dizzy. Oh, that is dizzy.
That's what happens when you inhale
I'm
helium.
trying to get in the spiritual realm for the story that we'll be telling today. But how are you doing on this Memorial Day?
I'm doing good. The weather's beautiful, so I'm excited to go outside and do some hiking and stuff.
Besides that, we got a ton of rain, like a lot of rain.
Yeah, well,
which was impressive, honestly. Like how much rain we got in a short period of time too. That's what was like the super craziest part was the fact that it rained at least where we're at for like 30 minutes, but
really?
Also poured.
Oh my gosh, tell me more.
Like I don't know what.
What
4
else
inches?
happened in the weather?
It flooded.
Did it get hot? Was it cold out?
Ass.
Did the wind blow?
It did.
Whoa.
Is that crazy?
Did you know it does that other places
You know
too?
something else? At what age? Let us know in the comment section below. We'll really alienate all of our fans here. At what age do you just really care about the weather? Like, I would really like to know the demographic of the Weather Channel. Every old person that stopped me the last 2 days was like talking just about the weather.
I got a call from my grandma yesterday.
I got
the tornado watch.
Yep.
Watch out, honey. Buckle down.
We're on a tech group text, not to name names, and all talk about the weather. And the last storm that happened, it was like, look at that hail, lightning hit us.
Pictures of teeny little pebbles. I honestly thought it was snow. And it's like, hail! I was like, okay, that's happening now.
So yeah, that's our passionate group of fans.
Yeah.
Today we do have a really cool story. This is the #1 downloaded and viewed YouTube episode we've ever done, and it's on Appalachia. And what's really fun about doing this when you do it consistently over time is you really find out like what's trendy, what people actually like and stuff, and you know what, give the people what they want. And what I just think it's just fascinating that of all the stories we've done, besides maybe like the power ones, like the Russian sleep experiment, something like that, where it's just like it runs online. Everything Appalachia gets really good traction, and the water kelpie. Didn't expect the water kelpie to do as well as it did.
It's because I put so much research into it.
I think so
but
too.
Enough about the water kelpie.
No, but anyway. So in today's tale, we're going to delve in a little bit more with the history of granny magic, and Appalachian Witchcraft.
More Appalachias?
Yes. Now, what's neat about this is I found another spooky story that today I actually shall read this spooky story. But that's not what you guys are here for when I speak. You want the history. You want the facts, the juice. But before we get into that, Carly, what are we drinking today?
So, the drink that we all recommend for you guys to drink this Memorial Day weekend is freaking delicious. Okay, so I did some research over the week and I was like, you know what? We haven't drank in a while and this weekend's coming up and I'm super duper excited to kind of get sloshed. Just kidding. Not that bad. But still, so this picture just caught my eye because it's absolutely gorgeous. And it is called the Strawberry Jalapeno Mint drink. And so basically the ingredients is half a cup of water, half a cup of granulated sugar, a lot of sugar, 2 jalapenos halved, 1/4 chopped strawberries, 8 fresh mint leaves, plus more for garnish, and then 2 ounces of bourbon. Yes, I thought I was gonna go with like tequila or something, but no, bourbon just adds like that little sweet, like just that extra goodness that you need. Okay. And then of course ice. And then there's 1 12-ounce can of seltzer, strawberry for garnish, and then red jalapeno sliced for garnish. And the picture is absolutely gorgeous. I sent you a picture because I feel like that's also what like drove me to want to drink this weekend. But it's like spicy, minty, sweet. I don't even know. It's all of the flavors put together. And for me, it's perfect.
And what's nice is going and guys, like an image will be popping up on screen while she's talking, really on the replay when I get to edit all this for our podcast listeners and stuff. And really, I want you guys to tell me in the episode description below, when do you like our episodes to launch? You know, it was funny. Like I think I was being a little irresponsible when I was like, oh, we're just going to move it around because it's like good for our schedule. And granted, I guess in the long run, it's got to be like somewhat convenient to us because we got to put it out. But on the same token, when do you guys really want to view this?
Yeah.
And I think like that's something I want to get a vibe for. Because if you guys are like, well, listen, like the weekend really is bad for us because we're literally never around. It's like, okay, I get it. Plus, I could do see a thing that if we wanted to do something for like the holidays, it's kind of hard when the episode launches the day of the holidays or the day before.
Yeah.
So like that's something to keep in mind. But if no one gives me feedback, I will keep it where it is.
We're gonna do what we're gonna do.
Which is the craziest thing about compared to this, like fishing the DMV, where it's like very easy to get feedback on everything. Yeah. And so I want you guys to step it up because you guys are my babies. You're my firstborn, so to speak. Like this is really what started it all here. And you're letting me down a little bit. You really are. Come on.
Tom's baby.
I want at least 3 people to comment, to email us at spiritsandghoststories@gmail.com. Something, hand signal, sign language, pigeons. I don't know. Tell us when you want the episodes to be released. It would really help us out to know that some of you give a shit.
Give us feedback.
So yes, please. Yes. Because I know you guys are listening because our downloads are insane. Because guess what? We're about to hit
3,000?
Nope.
4,000?
4,000 downloads. We're over 4,000 downloads in this thing. And it's funny. It's like there's a cult following. And I know you're out there. Now, granted, it might be because you're in different countries. And I thought at first I was about to say like you don't understand English, but then I was thinking like, wait a minute, why would you be listening to this
All
thing?
Right. Here we go.
So I was about to say that out loud. Wait,
it's like Tom talking about drugs.
I did say it out loud. Never mind. But yeah,
did.
Yeah. Wouldn't that be weird though if you did listen to something in like Spanish, but you had no idea what they're saying? Like, But every week you download it. Yeah. So that makes no sense. So I'm retarded, but we already knew that about me. So, oh well. So nice about this, I get to be like just silly and like me compared to the other thing where I have to be like suit and tie, a little bit more professional. So like, well, not suit and tie, but you get the metaphor there.
Literally, he's wearing the same exact outfit right now that he wears.
I would wear a polo.
It's the same pattern on your shirt.
Anyway.
From the same company.
I like this company. Huck used to make fantastic shirts. They no longer do.
Oh, you want to sponsor us for
no, for Piercing Ghost Stories.
Okay. Hey, why not?
But enough about us because I think you guys are done with that. Let's get into today's little background history about this really interesting cult following and what's really cool about this. We're just going to get right into it. There's a lot out there about this. And when you say witchcraft, I think you really start thinking about, if you're in the United States, you think about Salem.
When you say witchcraft, I say Salem. Witchcraft.
Salem?
I think I did that backwards, but that's okay.
Yeah. But you start really thinking about the Salem witchcraft trials. You think about definitely Halloween, Hocus Pocus. If you're in other cultures, that witchcraft is a huge denomination of basically women that were literate, women that practiced herbal medicine that was outside the jurisdiction of the regular norms, any kind of female that was either not married, was divorced, or lived on the outskirts of town would be considered a witch. And they would again, they would collect body parts. They would practice what they thought was black magic against the Lord, and they would ride hyenas.
Oh man, I totally would have been a witch back then.
And so all this comes again from, spoiler alert for you long-term listeners, the Celtic mythology.
Oh yeah.
Isn't that crazy? So what happens is the Celtics were a very spiritual group of people. Them and the Norwegians, or the Northmen, if you guys follow that.
Hyenas aren't big enough to ride.
Okay, so back then they weren't great storytellers. Like, I'm saying, like, they didn't have the background information to kind of build stuff up. I'm just telling you what I found.
So they just assumed hyenas were bigger.
Why
Why didn't they say that they rode tigers then?
I don't feel like that's as stealthy and there's something about a hyena. I think it's not as majestic. It's definitely more sleazy.
Okay. Sleazy.
I don't know if that's right, the wording for a witch, but like if you think of a witch riding something, it wouldn't be majestic. Like you think of a king or a queen riding a tiger versus a witch that practices crafty stuff. Yeah.
Okay.
But anyway, so the two biggest cultures really in Europe that was big into natural spiritualism were really the Nordics, or the Norwegians, and then also the Celtics. They really practiced this spiritualism of witchcraft and this animalistic nature. And that's really highlighted actually in the movie that's out now, which is The Northman, for the Norwegian culture. But then you have the Celts, who actually ruled all over Europe until the Romans pushed them back and started to annihilate them. And then the last bastion of their culture was in Great Britain and Ireland. And then, of course, if you guys aren't familiar with your history, the Romans then went into England and pushed them out over time. And then their last bastion was Ireland. So what's crazy is today in modern culture, we think of the Celts as just Ireland. But way back when, their range was not only Ireland, but it was all the British Isles and a lot of Europe. And so you see that culture really developed of this storytelling that spans thousands of years. And it really brings into the dragons, the witchcraft, the mysticism, banshees, fairies, gnomes, and witches. And then this spiritualism combined with the Catholic Church. Because when the Catholic Church really went over to these areas, it was really hard because they had so many gods and so many festivals where it was, just sacrificing like a virgin or something like that. That's really kind of a Celtic mythology there. And so what the Catholic Church decided to do was, instead of just trying to obliterate all their beliefs, because it's very hard to try to tame a people being like, hey, everything you believe is BS. They started to integrate some of those folk tales and stuff. And from that, it really highlighted more of that witchcraft too, because it would be people that didn't believe in God. And then you'd be like, this is how this then connects to the Puritans, because that heavy belief in witchcraft also really grew up from that Celtic mythology over in Great Britain. And then they come over to the United States, and then Salem happens. And so this idea that is so crazy, like one people's belief was so strong, you could see it sprout and develop through everything else, almost like just like these spider veins that grow and connect everything together. So now we have a backdrop of that. And then it really gets into Appalachia. Now, Appalachia, for you guys that haven't listened to the Snallygaster episode, I go into a massive detail about this, about the Appalachian culture. And so this is going to be a little bit more of like a quick recap of that. But if you want a full in-depth, watch the Snallygaster episode where I go into massive detail. So I thought it was pretty cool. But Appalachia really is the range of the Appalachian Mountains from Georgia all the way up to Maine. And this encompasses a vast amount of people. Now, the first people to actually settle this area were the Native Americans. And that's where it comes from, because the Spanish conquistadors went into Florida. And when they would talk to the Seminole Indians down in Florida, they said Appalachia was everything above Florida. And so the Spanish conquistadors made that stick. So Appalachia was everything up above that. Now, with that said, fast forward a little bit in time, you have the different populations that would immigrate to here. Two of the ones that were major in Appalachia were the Germans and the Scots-Irish, Celtics. And so they have that big blood of storytelling,
Big
but also of tight-knit communities, clansmanship, us versus them.
Yeah.
Those people that are independent. And if you guys have ever seen like Braveheart or the Scottish or the Irish, there is that hot streak of being independent, and it's your clique knit community.
Yeah.
That's what really founded Appalachia. And there was among other, there were different sets, of course, the Native Americans, and then African Americans too also settled down, especially, in the Carolinas. And so you mix all these cultures together into this melting pot in a place that's extremely rural. For people that aren't from here, the Appalachian area has some places that are just in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. You're just driving down the road and you're like, wait a minute. I'm out in the boonies. Like, I can't figure out, like, how far away am I from the nearest hospital? Probably like 2 hours at this point. And then there's like a mountain here, and then there's a mountain here. And it's just, there's wildlife everywhere. Even though you're like driving down the road, there's still just, it's crazy.
And this is a fun fact that I pulled from the Snallygaster episode, which is California became a major metropolis in the late 1800s, and they had electricity, running water, and plumbing by the early 1900s, before World War I. It took up until the late Great Depression, which was the 1930s, for parts of West Virginia and the Appalachians to get electricity and a multi-lane road. So think about that for a minute. We were able to colonize and create a booming metropolis in California, and they had to go past Appalachia before there were parts of Appalachia that had power. That's how rural this is. And because of that, these people had this extremely developed persona of self-reliance, and hospitals and things of that ilk weren't very much around. And so when you have these almost like tribalistic people all over the place, they develop their own culture. And to where, like, if you say Appalachia versus Appalachian, people will know where you are. Are you an outsider or are you not? Just because of your dialect. And that really comes from
Appalachian.
Yep. And that comes out of that deep Scotch-Irish background.
There's so many different ways to pronounce it.
Yes. And this is all important because this kind of gets into the meat of the story, that if you're an outsider, things look a little wonky. And, for our listeners that are from this area, exactly what we're talking about. A great example is their heritage of storytelling, which, and again, another plug back to another episode, was there are still schools in West Virginia that teach about cryptids, Mothman, Bigfoot, that big ass turtle. Name another elementary school that talks about their heritage like that. We're going to talk about the bald eagle. We're going to talk about the founding fathers. But here at our kindergarten, we got to talk about Mothman. This is our state creature. Why? I think it's the storytelling culture. It really is. And that gets us into the idea of Appalachian witchcraft and granny magic. And the history of Appalachian itself is the history of granny witchcraft traditions. Although the name is relatively new, the customs go back a long time. A combination of folk magic, faith healing, and superstitions, granny magic was often the only source of aid for people in remote, isolated regions. As European settlers arrived in the colonies during the 18th century, they brought with them the tradition of folk magic and healing melodies of their home countries. So look at this connection. These individuals were primarily women. These healers used the concepts they learned in Scotland, England, Ireland, and Germany once they settled in the Native American neighbors of Appalachia. These places included, of course, West Virginia, Tennessee, upstate New York, the Carolinas. They also blended their practices with the Native Americans, with the German immigrants, and with the Scotch-Irish, with a little bit of sprinkle of African-American descent. And so this was so cool about Appalachia when you think about it now. It is really this melting pot of this. All this comes together, and this spits out everything we talk about. Not deer, snallygaster, Bigfoot. It's just so crazy. All this comes from this area. Traditional granny magic included a lot of different practices. Dowsing, the practice of looking for water with a forked stick. So dowsing, Dowsing.
Looking for water.
Yeah. So what you do is you take two metal sticks.
Oh, we talked about this.
And And so, which is really interesting. So like dowsing, that was granny magic. That came from that culture.
Okay.
Let me get back to my place there. Practitioners of this often tended to be women. They also worked as midwives and assisted with childbirth, but could also be counted upon to provide herbal remedies if a young woman didn't want to become pregnant.
Basically, they were old doctors.
They were old doctors. because again, back in this time, there wasn't like hospitals all the way around.
Mhm.
Especially, could you imagine like West Virginia and some parts of North Carolina like 100 years ago? Like, I mean, it's remote now, let alone back then.
Mhm.
In the areas that were in these areas that rarely had access to professional medical care,
Yep.
granny witches worked as healers, crafting policies and salves and teas,
Salves.
salves. This is
Mhm.
why I wanted you to read this. Granny witchcraft. Because the problem is I wrote this and proofread it, and
Yeah,
still
I'm
I have
pretty sure
issues.
they're not concocting policies, but
Yeah, that'd be
we'll just
interesting.
let that slide.
I would love to see
I
Granny
don't know
action.
what
I
the
would love
heck
to. I would
they-
love to see grandmas actually on like Capitol Hill, like legit grandmas,
concocting policies as they type at their
especially
computer,
ones with the
their
massive,
typewriter.
especially ones with draws, like not like the grandmas, like or like politician grandmas, but like literally like redneck grandmas. That'd be hilarious.
Yeah.
Crafting salves and teas with curative properties. With curative properties. God damn it. I've read this twice and I'm still having problems with this. I'm such a blabbermouth. Like, not a blabbermouth, it's just a gab mouth. Anyway, this could all be done with different herbs and spices they would find, along with teas, coffee grounds in the bottom of cups.
Okay.
They would also do divination, Divination. Deviation, which is where you'd put either coffee grinds, pig ears, things like that into a bowl and like almost like reading the tea leaves, so to speak. So in Chinese,
we're talking about witches here.
So yeah, so
stirring the pot.
In Chinese or in Asian culture, that would be like reading the tea leaves. You'd throw tea leaves into a cup of water and you'd watch what they would do.
Okay.
And hey, read the tea leaves. It's basically the same thing here. Oh.
What? What's going on? Is our audio not working?
I don't know.
It better be working. We've been talking for 25 minutes. 25 minutes we've been talking.
She said there's no live chat.
Oh, okay. Well, everyone heard that then. What?
Just keep the phone because she texts back.
Okay.
So anyway, let me get back to the place. Boom, boom, boom. Perfect. Anyway, deviation that could be done in the remains of tea, coffee grounds in the bottom of a cup.
Did you say pig ears too?
And pig parts.
That's really weird.
That is very weird. And in 1908, John C. Campbell went to Appalachia to conduct a study of living conditions in the mountains. The result was a book called The Southern Highlander and His Homeland. According to Campbell, one may become a grandmother young in the mountains if she has survived the labor and tribulations of her young days, has gained a freedom and a place of irresponsible authority in the home, heartily rivaled by the men of the family. In sickness, she is the first to be consulted, for she is generally something of an herb doctor, and her advice is sought by young people of half the countryside in all things, from love affair to putting a new web in the loom. Because of the religious environment of the Appalachian region, in which nearly everyone has a staunch Protestant background, most of the people practicing what we call today granny magic would have disagreed that what they were doing was witchcraft. In fact, many charms and spells included incantations of psalms, prayers, and verses actually from the Bible. So I don't know if you for you guys that are at home, what that basically meant was back then the grandmother, the eldest woman, was the alpha of the house, and that's what they were kind of getting into with this talk.
And everything's deeply rooted in religion.
It's deeply rooted in religion, but there are some cultures where females, believe it or not, actually were in high regards even back then. So, and you even see this in old timey movies, like the old lady of the tribe was very revered because she has a lot of experience. She has seen a lot. Again, women and this is, I think, is an interesting fact here. Women generally would live longer than men back then.
Mm-hmm.
And you'd be like, well, Tom, that doesn't make any sense. Well, think about it. Like men back then were hunter-gatherers. They were fighters.
Yeah. They would go off to war.
And so there was a higher probability of them dying. And so if you're in these local tribal areas, women would, like, by ratio, you would get 1 or 2 women that would live longer. So think about it. You'd be like, yeah, okay, Tom. Generally, yeah, probably women and men would die at the same age, but there was a higher statistical probability of one woman living longer than everyone else in the tribe. That one was then automatically revered. This is when people, like men, would die in their like 30s or 40s. So if you get somebody that's a grandma at age 48, all of a sudden she's the revered tribal leader, basically. And you combine that with the biblical side of this thing and doing prayers and songs when people are sick, or to wish people well, or to bring in a new baby. And if you're an outsider, you think like, oh, it's witchcraft. But no, that's just that old Christian belief with a twist, so to speak. Many of the granny magic traditions of the mountains share some common ground with folk magic found in other parts of the world. Depending on what part of Appalachia someone lives in the traditions that have been handed down from one generation to another, a practitioner of granny magic might follow a variety of practices. In addition to magical traditions, many of the granny women of the past served as healers and midwives. And this is fact checking from a guy with a PhD from the University, I believe, of Maryland, writing this dissertation back in the day.
Okay.
The granny women would arrive at the home of a mother in labor with a bag of herbs, roots, and leaves. She would use these to help the mother safely deliver the child, and then might recite a verse from the Bible or a protective charm to keep both mother and baby healthy, especially in a time of high infant and parental mortality. Because mountain dwellers were often nowhere near a doctor's office, and the cost of professional medical treatment was prohibitive, it often fell to the local women to provide health care for their neighbors, setting broken bones, treating fevers, and caring for the terminally ill. Now, fast forward to today, there's a resurgence in interest in the granny magic tradition, although it never really went away in Appalachia. As more people in the mountains try to hold on to their traditional customs, granny magic is becoming once again more popular as outsiders venture into the interior of Appalachia. And this makes sense, especially if you look at West Virginia University, Morgantown. There are so many more like bigger cities. I don't want to say bigger cities, bigger, like more well-known towns in the heart of Appalachia. And you have people, let's say from Loudoun County, come out there because they want to brew and they think it's all hip. And you get into these like, and I think we're all guilty of this, is this perception. Well, example is I lived in Loudoun County my whole life. And there was this weird time before Loudoun County got too built up. And you have people from Alexandria coming out there with cameras like, hun, there's a deer.
Right.
And they would stop.
They pull off on the side of the
You know
road
what I mean?
to take pictures of the deer, and it's like,
yes. And they're like, oh my God, it's a deer. I've never seen one of these things. Look at that.
They're here
Look
every
at that.
day.
Look at that majestic creature. Look at him. Look at him.
Yeah.
Sir, stop your car. There's a deer right there.
Yeah.
And then they take pictures around Percival and stuff. And like, oh my God, this is so rural. Look at that barbarian right there.
People from DC going to Berkeley Springs, West Virginia, where my parents live. And it's just like, it's packed. Like, it's a tiny little town. There's not much to see. There's a couple little hole in the wall cafes. Serve pretty good food, but it's all like, vegan, up to date, organic, everything to kind of cater to those people coming from like those big inner cities that want to come experience like the countryside, as you would, and then you go there and then it's just like a tiny little street and an old theater.
And with that, I think there is a bias there, so that when people come into it, they have this they have a perception of what it actually is.
Right.
And again, the old saying, your perception is actually reality, because it's your
Exactly.
reality.
Right.
And so people want to hear the banjos and stuff. And then so you have this reverence for older women. You have this idea of granny magic, and to the locals, it's one thing, but to everyone else, like, oh, it's witchcraft. Oh, wow, look at this. Look at this Nana. She's calling Satan. She's calling Satan to this woman.
Yeah.
And I can perfectly tell, because I can just picture a couple that are just the most like Oregon hipster people coming into this town, and you have old Nana on a rocking chair polishing a shotgun.
Right.
And it's like, yep. I mean, that's your kin there.
Bobby Joe. Ding, ding, ding,
yes.
ding, 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 ding.
And then, so your mind's already running. Oh, wow, look at her. She's going to kill us all. So anyway, so I think that's really cool. And after all this cultural context and awareness of Appalachian life, it is a key component of the practice. As author H. Brian Bullard, the official village witch of
Wait, what?
Asheville.
Start over.
As authors like H. Brian Bullard, the official village witch of Asheville, North Carolina, and Sarah Imsey of the a university instructor and practicing pagan, work hard to educate people about the traditions and mountain customs of the Appalachia and the legacy of their Appalachian ancestors. And so that is really the background of granny magic. And I think it's a really unique culture. And with that said, it's time for us to get into a little bit of a tale, a little bit of a yarn. And I think really now with this context in mind, this story really is told, I think, from the perspective of an outsider.
Okay.
I think telling the story of what they think it's kind of like.
What most of us can then relate to.
Yes.
Sounds good.
So, time now for the tale of Grandma's light.
Mm.
In one corner of Grandma's living room stood a lamp that was almost never turned off. She would change the bulb every week like clockwork, awaiting until the afternoon lights poured through the window and filled the room. Even then she hurried, holding her breath until the deed was done and the lamp was back on. I would ask her about it once in a while. Each time she would smile softly, tousling my hair, and promptly change the subject. I didn't learn the truth until I was 13. The first time I turned off the lamp.
Wait, you leaned the truth?
Learned, but it says leaned, so I'm thinking that's like a dialect.
Like an accent.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I didn't know if I could lean or learn. I didn't know how to do it.
Learn.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. There you go. She's so natural at it. That's why I wanted her to actually.
I did it.
That's why I want her to read this story because it's like I'm an outsider reading her culture
I'm
here.
not an insider.
We should have my mom actually read this. That'd be real fun. Yeah, huge shout out. We need to get
your grandma.
Oh my god, we need Vicky and my mom to read a story together and just go pure, just banjo playing.
That'd be gold.
Anyway, I just wanted to see what would happen when I turned off the lamp. Grandma screamed when she walked into the darkened living room. A plate of cookies fell from her hands and crashed to the floor.
No, Grandma.
I could hear her praying under her breath and mumbling some kind of incantation. Tears were shining in her eyes when she turned to me, her lips pressed thin. Without warning, she slapped me hard across the face. Grandma had never so much as raised her voice before, and I was too shocked to cry. She cried enough for both of us, though, gathering me up in her arms and begging for my forgiveness. With her face buried in my shoulder, she finally told me about the lamp. It was a ghost light, she said. Ever since she and my grandpa had bought the house back when they first arrived in America, the spirits of the dead had plagued her. Only when her burden threatened to drive her mad did she ask Grandpa for help. She had expected him to laugh out of the house, but he had surprised her by nodding gravely. It was he who had first lit the ghost light, and as long as the beacon burned, the darkness, she had never seen another spirit. She told me that her grandpa's mother was a witch from Ireland, and when he moved over to the Americas, something followed them both. And what she found out was that it was her turn to take on the mantle. I stopped visiting my grandma after that, though. But the time I received news of her death, I hadn't seen her in over 10 years.
What?
As her only living relative, I shouldn't have been surprised when I inherited her house.
Oh.
Yet as I sat in her lawyer's office listening to him read her will, I was speechless. I had a difficult time paying attention. After that, absorbed as I was with the business of remembering. So much love had filled those walls, so many happy memories. As I thought of tiny, sterile apartment in the city, I quickly made my decision. As I sat in the sterile apartment, Jesus H, fuck, I suck at reading. As I thought of my tiny, sterile apartment in the city, I quickly made my decision. I was almost overwhelmed by the emotion as I walked through the front door. Everything looked exactly as I remembered it from the childhood.
Wait, they've decided to move into their grandmother's house?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah.
No.
Exactly as I remembered it from my childhood. Houseplants still cluttered on the windowsills. That's definitely you. Decorated bird plates still hung on the walls. This is so you. And the ghost light.
I am a grandma.
And that ghost light still burning in the living room. Seeing the old lamp sent a chill down my spine. I froze in my tracks, the smile fading from my lips. And I couldn't help but think of the night Grandma had slapped me so many years ago. I had told my mother about the ghost light the next day, but she dismissed it as a simple, old world superstition, that old witchcraft from the mountains.
Keep that
It
sucker
was the
lit.
same way when she was growing up, she told me. She told me I shouldn't worry about it. Still, I couldn't shake the conviction that I had finally seen the truth, the depths of my grandma's lunacy. Maybe that's all it was. Was she just crazy? I ran my fingers through the fringe of the lampshade as I thought, a bloom of sadness darkening my nostalgia. Sighing heavily, I turned the ghost light. I turned the ghost light off
Oh, they did not.
with a distinct click. Something woke me later that night. I lay in bed listening to the darkness until I heard scratching from the living room. Sounded like a dog. No, not a dog. Like rats. Rats were the last thing I wanted to deal with, though, at a moment like this. I rolled
Bring
over.
on the rats.
I rolled over with a groan, determined to ignore it until the morning. Scratch, scratch, scratch. Scratch, scratch, scratch. Continued intermittently, consistently jerking me from the edge of sleep. And I finally had enough. I threw the blankets off me and I stormed out into the hall. Moonlight flooded the front of the house, and I didn't bother turning on lights as I made my way to the living room. I knew every inch of the house, even after so many years, and I moved confidently through the dim light. I was furious at having been woken from a dead sleep, and my anger ill prepared me for what I was about to find. As I turned the corner and peered, an elderly woman was crouched in the corner.
Oh no. Oh no.
Her gaunt back to me. She was scratching at the floor
Oh no.
where the walls met, stopping every few minutes to cock her head, and then doing it again, both hands frantically scratching on the ground. A gnarl of dread unfurthered in the pit of my stomach. I had no idea how this woman had gotten into my house, and though it was obvious she needed help, it took me some time to summon the courage to approach her.
Turn the light back on.
My hand shook as I reached out to gently squeeze her shoulder. As I reached my hand out, trembling, I meant to ask her where she lived, who her caretaker was, but the words were driven from my mind when she turned and I saw her face. Her eyes were solid black, bottomless pit that didn't reflect the moonlight. Her jaw hung impossibly open, unhinged, and the dark tunnel of her mouth spiraled down into her throat. I had a moment to realize who she was, to recognize the familiar map of wrinkles on her face, the curls of her wispy hair. Then my grandma screamed. I shrieked and stumbled backwards away from the nightmare in the corner. My arms flailed in the air, reaching the nearest lamp, and my hands touched the ghost light. I yanked the chain, filling the room with the light. Poof! She was gone. After that moment, I never turned off the ghost light again. After letting the bulb burn out one evening, I began changing it every week, just as Grandma had done. Eventually, I got married, and luckily for me, my wife was tolerant of my strange fixation would be different. Fixation on the lamp.
Ew.
The light choke me harder. The light. That'd be too weird. That'd be too weird kinks to bring in.
Ew.
The ghost light's got to stay on, and you need to use that belt on me. The light continued to burn. Let me back up. Eventually, I got married, and luckily for me and my wife was tolerant of my strange fixation on the lamp. The light continued to burn, and I lived my life happily enough. But my grandson had been asking about the ghost light lately. Each time he asked, I smiled softly, tousled his hair, and promptly changed the subject. For some reason, I can't bring myself to tell him the truth. I think about how I pulled away from Grandma, how I thought her crazy, and I kept my mouth shut. I worry though. I know I won't be around forever, just as I know he will eventually turn off the ghost light one day, and I worry that he might see me then, twisted and gnarled, wrong, scratching at the corner. And that was the tale of Grandma's light.
That was a good story. Super creepy. Short to the point. I loved it.
Mhm.
I mean, obviously he made a terrible decision of turning that light off, but he learned his lesson and didn't die from it. So
I really like this one. I don't know. I just thought it was interesting. I like it's a generational thing. And apparently for some reason, the only part, if I had to like pick the story apart, is the fact that it's like, so it was his father. It was the son's, the grandfather's mother's affliction that was passed down to the grandma.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was passed down to him, but it should have been, why did it skip a generation? Should have been his mother.
Like, where was his mother and all of that?
Yeah.
Maybe his mother passed away.
Because it seemed like it set it up that it was the two generations of females, and then it switched to him.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that was the only, like, if I had to pick an issue, because I thought it was interesting, like, it did bring into this Harbinger, like, every female in the family line had to keep the light on, and then it switched to him. Yeah. So if I would edit the story, I'd like make it.
Or was it a woman?
That's what I just, what?
No, I'm saying, or was the author a woman?
Oh, I don't know. I just said like that was the only thing, but like
that's the only thing that you
could tell, like you could definitely feel like that witchcraft vibe in there about the light and everything. I thought that was really, really well done.
Mm-hmm.
And so like some of these stories, the best ones I found like with this stuff are ones that aren't over the top, like world ending. It's this subtle vibe of mystery, of supernaturalism.
Right.
Those are the best ones.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that was.
It's like you see the ghost one time and you've got a horrific moment, and then
that's it. Yeah. No one's.
Resolved.
It's not over the top. It's not world shaking. Yeah. And that's But that is.
That makes it more realistic, though. To be honest,
it does
because you know people do see ghosts like
and
that.
The backstory too.
Mm-hmm.
It really fleshes out that world.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the return to granny magic and witchcraft in Appalachia. So really hope you guys like that. I think Carly has something for us too.
This is the first time I've ever done this.
Mm-hmm.
But everybody, I would like to read to you the scary thing in the news. Did I say that right?
Yeah.
I don't even know.
Scary stuff in the news.
Scary stuff in the news. I don't know. This one caught my eye. This
Did you want to send it to me real quick?
Okay, hold on.
So she's going to send it to me real quick. And again, on the re-upload, guys, this will all be there. Again, for our live stream viewers, because we try to do more live stream shows, just get a little bit more interaction with our 3 or 4 fans. The chat is down for some reason, and I have no idea why. So we'll fix that next time.
All right, sent it. Okay, so here we go, ladies and gentlemen. The scary thing in the news is U.S. construction workers spot missing woman's skeleton through window.
What?
I know, crazy. All right, so medical examiner's office is conducting a test on McMichael's skeleton, but it could be another 4 to 6 months before the cause of death is confirmed.
That's
crazy.
Freaking weird.
Okay. In a horrifying discovery, construction workers in New York City, US, found a woman's skeleton while doing maintenance outside her apartment building last month. According to the Newsweek, 54-year-old Marilyn McMichael lived in the South Jamaica houses in Queens, New York. It is believed that Miss McMichael may have been dead since August of 2020. As that's the last time a page was turned on her calendar.
What the heck?
The discovery in apartment 7H was made on April 26th. The workers were standing on scaffolding when they spotted the woman's skeleton through her open bedroom window on the building's 7th floor. Okay. This is just crazy because how many times, throughout Halloween do people call 911 on other people's decorations? And I know that maybe people might have seen her and thought, oh, it's just, a decoration that she's left out all year. Maybe. But still, at the end of the day, if you see this skeleton that's been there for 2 years, don't you think that you would get a little it looks like she's wearing pajamas.
Well, the thing that's really just shocking about this story to me, okay, this is my logical brain going into it. It's like, how the hell did no one go around for rent?
that comes to that. Hold
Oh,
on.
it does?
Well, remember what happened with COVID is that everybody didn't have to pay rent for like a year.
Oh my God.
So no one thought anything of it. Yeah. Okay. So speaking to local media outlet, Miss McMichael's foster sisters, Simone Best Jones and Charmin
Ultra.
McElliff,
Okay, that works.
said that they began worrying about her in June of 2020 as the first wave of COVID-19 pandemic was ebbing. They said that Ms. McMichael called them saying that she wanted to go to the hospital. She didn't sound sick at all, said Ms. McElrath, adding, she sounded a little manic, and I was trying to explain to her they're not accepting people at the hospital right now. The foster sisters informed that Miss McMichael had a history of emotional problems. They even said that they went to visit the 54-year-old at her apartment, but their knocks and calls were unanswered because she was dead. Still, the sister said that she was not unusual. That was not unusual for her behavior.
How old was this woman?
It only says it like 14 times. 54-year-old, as she sometimes chose not to speak with them for years.
Dad, if you're listening, this is why you need a smartphone.
Yeah.
Apparently, if this woman just knew how to text or Snapchat or like be able to slide into
Post something on
DMs,
Facebook.
yeah, because guess what?
You can at least see that she's like on Facebook because her little dot like shows up. You know, that
this
she's
is important
not dead.
because at least your mom, you probably text her every now and then, and if she never answered, you'd be like,
oh, I would call her right away.
Yeah, you'd be like, oh, this is weird. But
Mhm.
my dad, yeah, he's dead.
Apparently, she didn't have family or friends or anything.
Really?
Nothing, because
That's depressing as fuck.
However, as time stretched on, their fears grew. Simone and Charmin decided to call 911 and file a missing persons report in January this year. But this is the effed up part. They were told that McMichael hadn't paid rent in over a year. The sisters said that they also met resistance when they tried to file a police report to the New York City Housing Authority. Bad job. And they said because they weren't next of kin. They were foster sisters. They were the only people that cared about this poor 54-year-old woman.
That's fucked up.
And the police were like, well, because you're not a blood relative, we're not going to take you seriously. Then in a meeting with the housing police officers, an official told the sisters that Miss Best Jones' parents were on McMichael's emergency card. And then they let them know that they had been dead for over 20 years. So that shouldn't be valid. Okay. The sisters then finally were able to convince the New York City Police Department managers and a police officer to visit McMichael's apartment with them, but their master key could not open the door. After that, Miss Best Jones said that they never tried again. In April, when the construction workers saw the skeleton, the sisters said that McMichael's neighbor notified them of the horrifying discovery. So they didn't even find out from authorities. They found out through the neighbor saying, hey, there was a skeleton found in Miss McMichael's room.
What about the smell?
Why didn't the neighbor wonder where she was?
Or this, like, okay, I'm sorry, a skeleton?
Right.
Which means?
She's been dead. I don't know what does he mean.
Not just like, no shit, she's been dead, Sherlock. Do you think you just poof into a skeleton like it's some goddamn Sims game? Like you just die, poof, skeleton.
Me? You know what that means.
She rotted and she completely deteriorated into the skeleton.
It's been a long time.
The smell.
Yeah.
That to me is the shocking part. You're saying if you lived in an apartment complex, if we lived in a compartment complex, you know what? Fuck it. Let's just say our neighbors here. Let's say both of them dropped dead and they just rotted there for a while. We would smell them.
Yeah, that's true.
And so, like, what I'm curious about is, like, I mean, clearly it's not Loudoun County. Where
Is New York just that stinky that they didn't notice? I don't know.
Or the rats, or the maggots, or any of that stuff.
Ew. What I'm trying to figure out,
like,
was the window open and she was, like, out across the window? Or
she was laying in a position, maybe like, I don't know, like near the window so she could see through it. But that's just, that's
I guess that would be the reason nobody like called 911 or saw her. But anyway, basically, they still don't know why or how she died, and it could be another 4 to 6 months before they can confirm the cause of death.
So that's
the story.
Oops, sorry. That was scary stuff in the news. And Carly, congratulations. That right there was a very good intro to scary stuff in the news.
So
I like that.
Stay connected with your friends so that when you ghost them, they can find out, if you're dead or not.
Yeah, exactly. And for you older individuals, this is why you need to text, get a jitterbug or something else like that.
Get involved with social media.
Yeah, some kind of just some things so we know when to contact you. Because I'm sorry, like a phone call. Okay, I get it. Do we all have time to sit down for 30 minutes just talk on the phone? No.
No.
But a text message like, you dead? No?
No.
Cool.
Cool.
Keep it going.
Heart emoji.
Yep,
Go on with
exactly.
life.
But yep, guys, that's week 41 in the books, Appalachian Witchcraft, Granny Magic. We'll see you next time. And you know what? I'm sorry. Have a great Memorial Day weekend.
Enjoy your holiday.
Yep, enjoy your holiday. We'll see you next time. Bye.